There's only one way I can succeed at my task, my self-appointed task of renovating the electric car industry, and that is to let go of my task. There are two ways of letting go. One is to die, and the other, which in a sense is transcending life, right? You go to heaven. The other is to transcend the relative and go to God, become enlightened. Either way, I'll be letting go, and letting go is the only way it will manifest, materialize. Because in a sense I'm holding on to it too much. It means too much to me for other people to participate in any kind of serious way. You know, I'm trying to drum up support or interest in other people so that it becomes a movement. It isn't just, oh, look what I did, you know, kind of thing. You know, I did it on the simulator, but that's it. And I know if I went any further, it would be the end of me. So, because I'm not enlightened. I don't have support of nature. Well, what should happen if I should become enlightened? I'll probably die anyway. Because the amount of hatred that I've managed to engender and inspire, I've inspired probably more hatred among people than anything else. Maybe because I'm so unabashed, you know, I have no shame. You know, I should be ashamed of myself, right? Any decent person would be ashamed of themselves promoting such an idea, knowing the consequences. That it would change society to a drastic degree, and change is stressful. So I'd be creating stress for people. I should be ashamed of myself. Even though it's a better world, when it's too abrupt a change, it's traumatizing. It's traumatic. That's stressful. So the stress alone would kill me. The stress of other people that I would be paying for. Now, why would I pay for it if I'm enlightened? You're not supposed to pay for other people's karma when you're enlightened, right? Well, there's a silly little problem I have, and that's called the unforgivable. Now, if you're like Krishnamurti, you become enlightened when you're young, and you haven't created any enemies in this life yet, and so there's no way for anybody to realize why they're miserable, because they just look at you and they think you're weird. But if perchance you're like me and you put off enlightenment when you had the chance when you were 19, your first chance, 3 years after I started TM, and you keep putting it off by way of sabotage, what can you do? Like Eric Dollard says, you're a coyote, you can't change your stripes, you keep going back to your old habits, and you make enemies. You know, you inspire hatred more than anything else. I got away with it when I was 21, when I came fresh out of college from MIU. I inspired people to make a change in their eating habits, and now I can go into Walmart and I have a huge selection of foods available. I can even go to Jamba Juice and get wheatgrass juice. And that was the whole point. I was promoting sunflower greens, sunflower sprouts, because I saw it being done in a health food store in Hawaii, and I was growing wheatgrass and sunflower greens and buckwheat lettuce in my dorm, in the lobby of my dorm at school, at college, and I had a compost pile outside. So people kept saying, oh, you should, when you go home, you should go into business and become a farmer. So I thought they were nuts because I'm no farmer, but they made, their point was, well, what their point was, I don't know, but what I got out of it when I got home, I interpreted it as meaning, if I want to see change, I can make change happen by being change, right? So that's what I did. And it took over a year, about a year and a half, and I made $60. I spent $500. I spent all the money left remaining for one more semester of tuition at college, because I was paying out of my pocket, and the pocket was money from my father's death. So I almost spent it all on my private education. It's amazing how talking can clean your teeth. Bursts of air dislodges the food between the teeth. I have a lot of gaps between my teeth at my age. Missing teeth, too. So I managed to put all the good karma to good use. See, I came back from MIU with a lot of good karma. That was it. So despite the fact that I made a lot of mistakes traveling around LA City, promoting my product, making a lot of foolish, naive mistakes, I did engender a few enemies. Still, I had enough good karma to propel me forward and be the wind beneath my wings, but more importantly, be the wind beneath everybody else's wings when it finally caught on. And it did. Within a year and a half, it caught on. And I could back away, and the Kowalski brothers, who were in charge of growing alfalfa sprouts, they were located up in the Topanga Canyon hills, they swooped in and took my place, and the whole thing took over. And then it just mushroomed, because I had read about it in the Roddale Press Organic Gardening and Farming magazine back in the late 70s. I was a subscriber, that specialty farmers were growing their specialty vegetables, baby carrots for instance, so there was a supply without a demand, and they didn't know what to do. So I figured out I'd connect the dots by informing the public that we have more eating options available than just the usual. You know, if I wanted to get vegan protein, you know, something other than peanut butter, and that's all there was peanut butter, and canned gluten. It came in slices, Libby's, and it came in a can. It may not have been Libby's, but no, it was Loma Linda, I believe. Yeah, well, whatever it was a health brand or something, but it was in a can, a tin can, gluten, wheat gluten, already prepared, packed in water, in a can, and that was it. So now I can go to Walmart and I can get more than one choice of brand of vegan wieners. I can get soy, I can get gluten, and I can get a blend of the two. And then within the context of those multiple brands, I can get different flavors within each brand, which are basically just various spice derivatives. You know, they're just different derivatives of spicy. But there are wieners, and they're pre-cooked, so I don't even have to cook them. Just eat them out of the packet, and then I can get all kinds of other things. So it's and organic stuff and juices, all kinds of juices. You can really spend your money, and then they have a whole gluten-free aisle if I wanted to go there, and they have a whole organic section to their produce. So this was, you know, didn't exist prior to 1980 or 81 or 82. I can't remember the last year I finished my project. It might have been 1980. No, 1981 or 82. I think I started in 1980 and I finished in 82. So it was over a year. It was not quite two. Well, it was 2 summers. No, I think it was 81. Well, whatever. So prior to 1980, this phenomenon had not yet taken place, and probably somebody else, you know, would have done it, but I did it. I didn't get the credit, and I didn't get the money. I didn't make any money, spent money, but I got my task fulfilled. I managed to improve our selection of foods, and that benefits everyone. Everybody can understand that. We all want more options. Well, when it comes to energy, we don't have more options, and frankly, nobody wants them. And I engender more hatred than anything else. So now if I go out, now if the only way for me to succeed is to die. And or if I don't die, the only other option is to transcend mortality and not need to be reborn, and then I'll die. Because I've engendered hatred. You know, when you have the unforgivable sin, like Krishnamurti, if you don't make enemies in that lifetime, once you become enlightened, all that happens is you're miserable for the rest of your life. I don't want to say a name of somebody who's still alive, who's a perfect example of that, who may have the unforgivable sin. You know, you can't judge somebody else's sin. but he's definitely enlightened, and he's a prominent person in his field. I want to say what field, but I don't want to give anything away. And he's miserable when he's not working, distracting himself with constant activity. He falls back on his miserable state in life. And you can't be enlightened and miserable at the same time unless you have the unforgivable sin. But nobody's killed him, although, I wonder, came down with a disease recently that would have killed him, but he had some treatment and it's kept him alive. So I guess he has a mixed blessing of people who both love him and hate him. But when you have the unforgivable sin, you're miserable anyway, regardless of whether or not you have admirers or the opposite type of fan club. I don't have enough admirers who support me. I have a few, and that's nice, but it's rare. They come along on rare occasion, and they're poor like me, although I do have some good karma that keeps me alive. But I have no... I usually run out of money from my bank very fast. If that's any sign of how many admirers you have, or how many people you've stolen from, depending on how you get your money, is how much money in the bank, then I certainly have my dearth of admirers who are wealthy, or people I've stolen from who are wealthy, either one or the other, because I don't have any money in the bank to show for my profitable gain. I like to think what I do is valuable, but of course, one thing you learn is popularity in the marketplace, and that's what I did when I promoted sunflower greens. I was dealing with something that was on the brink of becoming popular, because the supply was already there. I didn't even provide the supply, so nobody could blame me for providing the supply. All I did was, Victoris Kulvinskas didn't even invent it, and Wigmore invented it. But she kept it to herself in her Hippocrates Health Institute in Boston, Massachusetts. And then Victoris Kulvinskas came along, a sickly guy who had worked on the Apollo program. He was a computer programmer doing scenarios, orbit scenarios and whatnot. And he was very sick, and he came to her, and she made him well. And then he got busy. He got a new job. He figured, hey, I got a new life. My life has been given back to me, so I'll just quit my job, my prior job, and work here. And he did. He drove a truck transporting organic produce. He managed the farm that she had, I think, associated with Hippocrates Health Institute outside of Boston. They had a farm, and he worked in the institute. Well, when I went there in 77, was it? Yeah, when I got off the fast. No, it was 79. Yeah, it was, I can't remember what year it was. No, it was 76. No, it was 77. Right. Because I got out of high school in 75. That's when I started the fast prior to graduating high school. 2 years of fasting. When I got off the fast, I drank tons of wheatgrass juice, but I had to know how to grow it. Oh, but that meant I had to go there before I fasted. No, it was in the middle of the fast. That's right. I went around the country. That's right. Just towards the end of the fast. So that would have been the spring of 77. I thought it was 76. Whatever. It was somewhere in there. Where was I going? I came off a tangent. Anywho, so I was a young child, and I hadn't made any enemies yet, And here I am, I'm 62, and I'm tired. I work myself too much. And I'm literally working up against a wall in which nobody really wants to listen. And when I had the price down really low, rock bottom low, I made a few sales, but that's only probably out of curiosity among people who who were inquisitive and wanted to find out what the book was about that I'm selling on Amazon, you know. And so they bought it, and now sales have stopped, and because I raised the price, because I realized that the book is worth something, but no one's buying, because they're not that curious, and they're certainly not that motivated. Now, it depends what kind of support you have. Right now, you know, it would take more than enlightenment to further this. It would take the support of other enlightened people, because it's not an easy task to go up against the wall of stubbornness, really. It's more than ignorance. It's a wall of stubbornness, of obstinate stubbornness, in which people don't want to change the way things are. So why should they? So I'm ruffling a lot of feathers and running a lot of risk. Thinking that anything could happen in front of my face. Now, Lord knows I may get a surprise. But in the meantime, the outlook at the moment is very dim, very glum. Not so good. Not too good. Because I'm not dumb, or I'm not that dim. You know, it's not like I don't know that people are not merely ignoring me. You know, there's different stages of ignorance. There's the stage in which you hope the annoying person will go away. And then there's the stage in which you become annoyed that he's not going away. So that's when things start to heat up and get nasty. And most of the time I don't have to confront that, because I don't. But once in a while I do. And I find out how much hatred there is already, because other people have gone before me and have plowed the field of hatred among those who don't want to listen. And some of them are scammers, but some of them are not, and it doesn't matter. Either way, they are engendering a lot of hatred among people who are kept ignorant on the topics, so they don't know the difference between a scammer and the truth. They think it's all a scam. And the ones who want to believe it's true do so because they're already convinced it's true, but they don't have the knowledge to make it happen. And then there are those who do have the knowledge and who are burnt out, like Paul Babcock, or not burnt out, they're just too old. You know, Paul Babcock and Peter Lindemann and Jim Murray are old. They have the knowledge, but they're old. Aaron Murakami has his hands full running all of his businesses, so he's making money, but one of his posts on his newsletters was a remark a while back that anybody who picks up Stanley Meyer's invention and tries to market it, an uncanny thing happens. The company goes out of business. And I think Genepex is one of them. You know, a Japanese company, they went out of business, but other people have tried and they've gone out of business. So it's, you know, the stubbornness against innovative renewables that do not equate to a limitation of any sort. You know, a wind farm is quite a limitation because your limitation is the size of your wind farm. And a solar panel, same thing, the size of your roof. So you want more energy and you have to pay for it with real estate. And you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to. The only thing you should have to pay for renewable is the innovativeness, the intelligence of the innovation behind the renewable. And solar farm and wind farm, or solar panels and wind farm, are not intelligent. They're renewable. They're smart. They're smart, but they're not intelligent because they have their limitation. And a few TED Talk speakers have drawn attention to that fact and say, see, renewable is not the way, and one even said, well, let's go back to thermonuclear. That's not the alternative to the limitation of renewable. So I've engendered a lot of hatred among people by trying to incorporate this idea that, hey, do you remember 100 years ago we had transients blowing up the power station of the electric trains in New York because the Edison company supplying DC power to the electric railway system in New York City was blowing up under the city because they didn't understand transients, and they had to hire Charles Proteus Steinmetz to figure out the problem, and he solved it. Transients are their own source of energy. They are their own source of renewable energy. They self-renew themselves. You have to have sunshine to renew the solar renewable. You have to have wind, and when the wind dies and the clouds come, you don't have renewable anymore. So that's another limitation. See all the limitations we have built into our system? So that's why we get tax incentives and tax breaks for those renewables, because they have their limitations. But the true renewables are the ones that are self-renewing, the ones that have no limitations whatsoever other than our lack of intelligence and our stubbornness against doing them. So I don't have the karma to succeed. All I have the karma is to understand. And I'm looking at failure, basically, to go any further. I've got a brick wall in front of my face, so to speak, in which I can talk all I want to, I can write all the books I want to, but it's resulting in no positive result that I will get to live to see, because it's engenders hatred as the wrong kind of response, the wrong kind of inspiration. It shouldn't engender hatred. It should engender something nicer, So, it's just one of those things. What can you do? What can you do? I did the best I could. I think I'm finished with the theoretical book, and I know I'm finished with the circuit book, because the circuit book is all theory based on simulation, and the theory book is the abstraction from that experience. What did I get out of it? Why do I think it works? And I think I did a pretty good job. The theory book is very short. I managed to squeeze down the I copied the screenshots from the circuit book over to the theory book, but that's, the book is not about building anything. If I spend one section of the book talking about the circuit books to sell them, then it shouldn't take up too much space. So the screenshots that I copied over into the theory book should not take up tons of space. So I shrunk them down. I put the 5 pictures together as one composition, taking up less than, taking up 1 page. Yeah, or slightly less than 1 page. Something like that. I think it's 1 page. So now instead of 5 pages, it takes up only 1 page. So I shrunk the book down, and then I added more text. But I think I'm done adding. So it's up to, I think, 17 pages. Well, that's the doc file that I write in. The eBook number of pages is 30. How I don't understand eBooks. They're something new to me. But I had fun, downloading the software for eBooks and doing the conversions to EPUB to Mobi and from doc. It was fun, because I had to correct errors in the EPUB that I could not correct in the doc, the Word file that I was working in. I kept making the same errors, and I didn't understand, why does it keep coming back when I got rid of it already? So I had to put it into EPUB in order to correct the error before I could finally publish it. posted on Amazon for sale. Republish it. Republish the redraft. So you know, what really seals the deal for theory, you know, you want to look in the real world, especially from a layperson's point of view. You want an example in the real world that epitomizes the fabric of creation at the atomic level. And we have this solar idea, the solar model. You know, planets in orbit around the sun is our model of the atom, but it's the wrong model. The correct model is actually a man-made device, a man-made invention that no longer is in our midst. It had a limited venue of 20 years between the years of 1955 and 1975. It's called core magnetic memory, and it's based on magnetic remnants. And if you look on Wikipedia for that article on core magnetic memory or magnetic memory, you will find pictures of these toroidal rings of magnetizable iron with wires going through the center, making a fabric of core memory that the computer would access. And that's the model of the universe. The wires are the electrostatic lines of force, and the toroidal rings of magnetizable ferrite are the magnetomotive rings where each atom is located in space, and they're connected together by a fabric web of electrostatic lines of force terminating on each atom. But the magnetomotive force is the transverse wave that spins around the atom. So that's the only thing that spins around the atom, because current moves. The magnetomotive force is the basis for current, but the basis for voltage can't move. And so that's what interconnects all the atoms together, the electromotive force. And the fabric of a core magnetic memory is a perfect example of the atomic model of the universe. It's unbelievable. It came to me last night, and then I realized I had to add one more section to the theory book, and that's it. So you got that for free. That's the macroscopic example of an atomic model of the universe. It's frightening how we manage to, in the digital world of all things, the very thing Eric Dollard hates. You know, he's an analog man. Here we have this invention in the world of digital electronics that's no longer with us, but is a perfect example of what is the foundation of what we could call his synergy. You know, Buckminster Fuller had his synergy. Eric Dollard has the synthesis and decomposition of electricity based on the three ingredients of electricity, namely what he calls magnetism, dielectricity, and time. And I just changed two of those terms, swapped out magnetism and substituted magnetomotive force, and took out dielectricity and put in electromotive force. Otherwise I kept time there. So because I wanted to highlight the fact that his his perspective of electricity is perfect to apply to the atomic model and redraft our physicist's view of what is the atom from the standpoint of an electrodynamicist such as Eric Dollard. But he's not doing it, so I figured I'll do it. So I made this atomic model, and it works, and now I've got an example of what it looks like, a perfect conceptual model of this new atomic model, a perfect example of this conceptual model in the real world of this new atomic model. It's unbelievable. It just blows me away. So I'm totally satisfied that I finished writing the book. If I write anything more, it's like, you know, I don't need to. You know, I don't, because now I've got it. I've got it down. So I'm really pizzazzed, you know, I'm enthused, but where's it going to get me, you know? I don't know. It doesn't mean we have to bring back the core magnetic memory. And the reason why I learned about it, the only reason why I learned about it, I have to give credit, and it's nameless because I can't remember who on Energetic Forum brought it to my attention, but it's the reason why, if I can remember the guy's name. I can't remember the guy's first name, but Davis Jr., Mr. Davis Jr. in 1842 wrote about it in his book on magnetism. He devoted a small number of pages, a few sections, to this phenomenon of magnetic remnants. Without giving it a name, he just gave examples and described the experiments you could do, because that, it was 1842. They didn't know much in those days. And that was the birth of the perpetual motion holder, but it didn't have a name at the time. It took Edward Leeds Skolman to revive that invention and give it a name and put it to good use as a teaching tool for his version of the theory of electricity. And he called his book Magnetic Currents, and it's a very fascinating book if you want to give yourself a chance to read its contents. He doesn't believe in voltage. He believes voltage is an effect of the cause, which is magnetism. And so both current and voltage arise out of magnetism, so he doesn't even believe the voltage exists. If I've read his book correctly, if I'm quoting it correctly, I think that's his view. But he says there's two different currents and they go in opposite directions simultaneously. And that's very interesting because we already know that to be true. We have the conventional direction of current, which is pointed out to us by the direction that diodes are pointing in, and then we have the electron theory, which goes in the opposite direction. That current comes out of the negative pole of the battery in the form of electron flow. So it's funny, we already have the two opposing directions of current already. We just say that, well, we don't subscribe to the traditional view anymore, so we can, because it would fight itself, and then we'd have zero current flow. But Edward Leeds Skolman solves that riddle, or conundrum, that paradox, by claiming that, well, each current is different. They're unique, so they don't conflict. They are monopolar. They are not dipolar, and so they can't possibly conflict, because even though they go on the same path, and he shows the corkscrew path that Eric Dollard subscribes to and Peter Linneman subscribes to, that current takes when it travels down the line, the wire. But he says it has to take the same corkscrew. In other words, it doesn't go in the opposite direction. If it's clockwise down a path, it doesn't take the counterclockwise. It takes the same counterclockwise path or whatever. It just goes in the opposite direction along the same path. So it's amazing that certain ideas, when they're good ideas, they keep coming back. They don't die a quiet death. They keep getting revived. They get reborn. But this core magnetic memory is a perfect example of this idea of mine to take Eric Dollard's theory of electricity and apply it to our atomic model to give it an update, to give it a major facelift, and take it out of the hands of the physicist and put it back in the hands of the electrical engineer and electrical technician, where it belongs. Electricity belongs in the hands of the specialists who specialize in electricity, not in the physicist who specializes in the nucleus of the atom. They should keep their business in their own affairs and not leave and not go out and monkey around in other people's business, because they're making a muck of electrical dynamics. It's amazing. It'd be like me trying to tell the physicists what to do, and yet I have to, because they've already made their mistake. See? So this is why I get people angry. And so instead of blaming physicists, which are considered holy priests, they blame me. Because, and this is a very important principle. Let me give you an example. Somebody on Energetic Forum baited me with his own egotism to see if I would become angry. In other words, to see if I could exhibit a greater degree of egotism than himself, so that he could point the finger at me and say, see, you're an egotist, when all the while he was using his own egotism to bait me, to bait the hook, to bait me to see if I would take a bite, and I did. I do have a bigger ego than he does. I'm just older and more worn out than him. But yeah. But it had to take his own egotism to bait me, to lure me into his fishhook, to see if I would bite, and I did. So it's really, entrapment is an act of evil. It's nothing short of an act of evil. To tempt somebody with evil to see if they have a greater evil than your own, that you can point them out and say, oh, see, look, we expect better of you, because you're a politician, right? You're promoting something, right? An activist is a politician of one, in which nobody else believes in you but yourself, and you go around promoting your view, just like politicians do. It makes you an activist, because nobody voted for you. You voted yourself into office. You've given yourself the task. So it is a political stance to take when you're an activist. It's just you have only yourself. You're lucky if you have anybody else. And I do, but it's not a lot. Mostly I have hatred, because they figure, oh, we've seen it before, it's nothing new, it's a con job. So it's not like they already know me, they just know the subject. They think they know the subject. Well, my mother was the same way. Oh, I know all about meditation, it's Hinduism, we're Jews, we don't believe in that. And so I had immediate resistance. But my stepfather, he couldn't care less. He signed the parental authorization form to release me from any binding liability should I transcend and enjoy it. So, as a minor, I got his permission. I just had to earn the money myself to start transcendental meditation. But be that as it may, I had immediate resistance from my own mother. But here I'm getting resistance not from the motherhood of nature, so to speak, but from her creatures, namely all the people who don't give a damn. They're incredulous to think that it's even possible, because they think either I'd be a multimillionaire, yeah, right, if I succeeded in promoting this, or they'd all be giddy with happiness. But they don't allow themselves to go there, and so they instead think better of themselves and say, no, this is too good to be true. Well, I guess if you don't want to take the trouble to figure it out, or read about how somebody else has figured it out, but see, they don't believe it's true, so they don't want to try to figure it out or believe it, or try to understand what somebody else has figured out. So, anywho, I have a weird situation on my hands, and I exhaust myself when I write. It really exhausts me. But I'm obsessive because I don't know what else to do with myself. It's hard for me to let go. And the irony is that if my son did come back to me, my creativity would go to zero. It would turn off immediately, because I'd have very little bodily energy. I would be all taken up by my son, and that would be the end of it. My creativity would go out the window. In fact, if I had a girlfriend, probably the same thing would happen. That's not entirely true. When I was with Samantha, my intuition would hit me, but it was things that were more mystical, abstract, philosophical, not concrete, not electrodynamics. Because even though electrodynamics is an abstraction, it's an abstraction of a concrete experience that's common to people, because we know how to mathematically model it, or else we wouldn't have simulators, right? So we know a lot about it. But the things I came up with were things that nobody knows anything about, and so they're considered metaphysical, of no practical merit, And so I could still do that, but that makes it highly personal. which makes you wonder if that was my fate in this life, is to only come up with novel ideas that are metaphysical and nothing practical. You know, because even my stepfather didn't think I would amount to anything, you know, anything practical. Well, yeah, it was his way of saying that I had a hate relationship with him. He didn't want to admit it until his wife was ready to divorce him. Then he wanted to blame me for his failed marriage, but he didn't want to admit it prior to that, because he was still enjoying himself. He was, you know, nobody was threatening his position yet, except me, and I had no social standing in his view, because I didn't eat meat. So I was antisocial because I did not eat meat. Now I eat fish, and I'm a hermit. So, go figure. Bizarre. Oh boy. Well, I've redeemed myself to myself. I no longer have any guilt over eating fish. I still don't like the flavor if I eat it too often. I have to wait a while to engender any desire to want to eat it, and that is such that I can enjoy it, the flavor, and the aroma is still a little strong. So I'm you know, it's a whole lifetime I've spent staying away from flesh. So how can you expect me to enjoy the stuff? But I enjoy the benefit. I just don't enjoy the experience of eating it too often. So I think I had 2 nights in a row, and that was about it, because I went, you know, oh, this is disgusting. So I skipped last night. I didn't eat it. Whew, gave me a break. But it does keep me grounded. But it doesn't change my karma. It only changes my physical karma. It doesn't change my social karma. My social karma is boiling with anger. You know, my interpersonal karma, I've engendered a lot of hatred. In today's world, nobody really wants to rock the boat. They just want to fit in their little nook, in their little cubbyhole, fit in and into the fabric of of society, and not make any waves. Don't be too innovative. Just innovative enough so that your company that you work for can make a profit and pay your paycheck, and you can buy a car and keep it fixed up. Well, I don't have a car in running order at the moment. In fact, I'm surviving on the bare minimum. But at least I have my health. I have food. I have water, and I have a means of keeping myself busy. But I'm accumulating hatred, and that's can only go so far. You know, it can only go so far. There was a guy who's I consider a saint, by the name of Epimenides. E-P-I-M-E N-I-D-E-S, Epimenides of ancient Greece, who lived to be 299 years of age, because he reached enlightenment while he was still a child. He was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something. He was a very young boy. He was a sheep herder, and he fell asleep in a cave. He was out looking for his lost sheep. Instead of counting sheep, he was looking for lost sheep, and he fell asleep in a cave for 20 years. And this is the basis of the Rip Van Winkle story. The legend comes from this legend. And he woke up, came back, nobody recognized him, you know, because he was 20 years later. So they thought he was whatever, you know. Abducted, abandoned, died, who knows, because they never found the body, right? He fell asleep in a cave. So, and he claims that he realized the universal connection of all things during this period of extended somnambulism. Well, he had the uncanny gift of foretelling somebody's future. But he had a scruple, and that was, he never told you your future if it was not good news. He kept his mouth shut. Well, I don't seem to know how to keep my mouth shut. And although I may be, I hate to use the word divinely inspired, but that's what transcending means. You know, it's common among meditators, so it's not. But see, how many meditators are there on this planet? Most people are not meditators, so they think, oh my God, you're so full of yourself. No, it's just I'm more fortunate than you are because I took the trouble to understand the value of meditation, and TM is the easiest way to transcend. Not that it's the only way. They don't have a monopoly on it, although they do seem to have the popularity of it because most people are TMers. But they don't have a secret patent on transcending. They just have a secret patent on making it easy to transcend. So it's easy to become inspired by the transcendental consciousness that is the it's in the likeness of God. You know, that's our nature, is to be in the likeness of God. So it's easy to transcend and be inspired, but that doesn't mean I make friends with what I have to offer, because I'm using it in a way that is socially not cool. It's not acceptable in the industrial countries of the industrialized nations of this planet. It doesn't make friends. You know, you'd be friends in third world countries. I'd be better off moving to Africa or something, you know. But you'd never hear from me again. I'd be out in the bush, and there's no money there to do anything with. And not to say that little schoolgirls in the deepest heart of Africa have not come up with free energy devices, and they had the wherewithal to put it together and make it work and win their science project. You know, just like what was her name? Shawnee Bogman of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, who had the personal assistance of John Bedini, won her science fair project. Likewise, there's a pair of girls in Africa who did something similar. They came up with a science project device, generator device that won their science fair project because it was over unity. So it does happen on occasion. Children will amaze us, but those are like two examples. How many times does that get to happen, you know, on this whole planet? Not too frequently. I managed to simulate it, and so everybody has the option not to believe that it's true, even though it's a $2,000 simulator, over $2,000 simulator. And I didn't pay for the simulator, and so I was forced to keep the circuit simulation simple, because otherwise I'd get an error message saying, too many components, you got to register the software if you want to make it any bigger, your circuit any more complicated. So I had to keep it simple, and still I came up with an over unity design despite its simplicity, maybe because of its simplicity. But still, that doesn't win favors from anybody, you know, in the sense that it doesn't win friendship. It wins a lot of enemies instead. I have better luck staying in the metaphysical realm of yoga or philosophy than I do sticking my nose in the world of the electrical engineer, who is dominated by the physicist and controlled. It's kind of like, what do they call it? S&M? SNL? Sodomy? Sadism and masochism, the way the physicists run the lives of the electrical engineer. It's like whips and leather and chains. It's amazing. That's literally what it is. That's the sexual relationship between the physicist and the electrical engineer. It's bondage. It's sexual bondage. Because it has so much passion. You know, this conservation of energy, which Eric Dollard says is a lie. He says it in his presentation, his 4-hour presentation that Aaron Murakami put up on his channel, the origins of the synthesis of energy. What's it called? Eric Dollard - Origins of Energy Synthesis. I think that's the title on YouTube. And it's almost 4 hours long. And he literally says, in the middle of all that the conservation of energy is not true. It breaks down under certain circumstances. And so it can't possibly be a law. So I go and say it's a lie. I'm bold enough to say that on my blog, Define the Atom.blogspot.com, I go so far as to say that physics is a lie. I used to have it as my description and my back cover blurb for my books on Amazon, but I thought, it's a little harsh, I better change it. So I went to a milder version, something more user-friendly. I'm trying to sell, I'm not trying to put people off, but I would like to think. But I was just reiterating what he already said, and I forgot, see, because I read about it and I forgot about it, and then I got to be reminded, oh, Eric Dollard said that, and I had already read about it, so no wonder I'm saying that. I'm just a little harsher. I use the word lie instead of it breaks down. But it's certainly not a law. Whether we call it a lie or we call it a breakable law, regardless, it's not a law. It holds for force, though. I'm willing to concede that it holds for force, but it does not hold for energy, because energy is not atomic, it's molecular, and so anything that breaks down, the law has to go with it. Laws only work for non-divisibles, like atoms. But atoms are not atoms anymore. They've now taken on the status of a molecule, even though we still call them an atom. And then we have subatomic particles. But atom means indivisible. That's what the whole purpose of the word, when the word was coined by Democritus of ancient Greece. So we're not even using the word properly anymore. We haven't changed our tune. We haven't changed our use of the word, but to apply to force only. And then we could say conservation of force. Time, conservation of time, conservation of electromotive force, conservation of magnetomotive force. Then, okay, But instead, you have to go to a different law, and it's called continuity of electricity. So Eric Dollard quotes that you have to maintain the continuity of electricity, or continuity of current. I think it's continuity of electricity. Continuity of energy? No, it's not energy. Continuity of electricity, I think it is. And it was actually invented by Heaviside, I think, and somebody else in Heaviside's era. So it's not that Eric Dollard does not subscribe to conservation, the basic theme of conservation. He just does it. He doesn't apply it to energy, because energy is a combination of ingredients. So it can't possibly be conserved, because you can break it down. So this is just a consequence. One of the things that Krishnamurti said is one of our problems is we don't take thought to its natural conclusion. And one of the things that Winston Shrout used to like to say is that every attorney starts his argument in the middle and never starts at the beginning. So he doesn't even have a premise to his argument. He just starts in the middle and hopes you don't notice. So he doesn't even have a premise. He hopes that you won't call him on his hearsay. Let's get to the bottom of this hearsay, these allegations that you're making in court. And that's what the conservation of energy is. It's an argument among physicists acting like attorneys, starting in the middle of the argument. And we never question them because they're authoritative figures, Anywho. But, you know, all you have to do is take them at their word and see how they're self-contradictory. When you have subatomic particles, subatomic forces, or subatomic particles or waves, you can't possibly have conservation of energy. You can call that the equivalent to matter at the atomic level, because you break it down. So E doesn't equal mc squared anymore, because it's been broken down into something smaller. So it can't be conserved. There's no way. It can't be maintained, because that's what conservation means. It's not a tenable concept, because it cannot be maintained. Oh well. So, these are my fears and my suspicions and my complaints and my peculiar way of looking at things. Be that as it may, I've talking for quite a length of time now, and so maybe I should shut up. Okay,